Growing up, everyone always compared me to my older sister, Melissa. She was the golden child, straight A's, perfect hair, captain of the debate team, and married her high school sweetheart right after college. By 30, she had the picture-perfect life, successful lawyer husband, twins, and that sprawling Victorian house our parents helped them buy in the suburbs. I was the complete opposite, the artsy one who struggled through school with undiagnosed ADHD, bounced between retail jobs, and lived in a tiny apartment downtown. Despite our differences, I always tried to maintain a relationship with my sister. When she had twins 3 years ago, I became Aunt Emma, the one who showed up every weekend to babysit, while Melissa and her husband David enjoyed their date nights. My parents constantly reminded me how generous Melissa was for including me in her family's life, despite my unstable lifestyle choices. I didn't mind babysitting. The twins were sweet, and it gave me purpose when my own life felt directionless. But things changed last month when I accidentally discovered something in Melissa's house that I wasn't supposed to see. It started with a teddy bear in the twins' room. I was cleaning up after putting them to bed when I noticed something odd about their favorite stuffed animal, a small, almost imperceptible, black dot in one of its eyes. When I looked closer, I realized it was a camera lens. My blood ran cold. Why would my sister have a hidden camera in her children's bedroom? I initially rationalized it. Maybe it was a nanny cam to keep an eye on the babysitters. That made sense, even if it hurt that Melissa didn't trust me enough to tell me about it. But then I found another camera hidden in the bathroom air vent, and another in the guest bedroom, where I sometimes stayed overnight. That's when I started searching the house systematically. By the time I was done, I had found 11 hidden cameras throughout the house, all in places where I would be with the children, including one positioned directly above the shower in the guest bathroom. My hands trembled as I called my best friend Lisa. "There are cameras everywhere," I whispered, terrified the microphones might pick up my voice. "I don't know what to do." "Get out of there," Lisa said immediately. "Pack up the kids if you have to, but get out now." I couldn't just leave the twins alone, but I was afraid to stay. Melissa and David weren't due back for hours. As I paced the kitchen, trying to decide what to do, I noticed something else odd: a small notebook that had fallen behind the fridge. I wouldn't have seen it if I hadn't been looking everywhere for additional cameras. The notebook was filled with Melissa's handwriting, detailed notes about me: what time I arrived each weekend, what rooms I entered, how long I spent with each child, what I wore. But most disturbing were the notes about my prescribed medication for anxiety and ADHD, which I occasionally took with me when staying overnight. E took blue pill at 9:15 p.m., slept until 7:40 a.m., no night wandering. E brought new medication today, research composition. There were dozens of entries dating back nearly 2 years. She'd been watching me, studying me like a lab rat. But why? The basement door caught my eye, the only room in the house I had never entered. Melissa always kept it locked, claiming it was David's home office and strictly off limits. I knew where they kept the spare key, taped under the kitchen island. My heart pounded as I retrieved it, half expecting Melissa to burst through the front door at any moment. The key fit perfectly. The basement door creaked open to reveal a staircase descending into darkness. I should have called the police right then, I should have grabbed the twins and left, but something compelled me forward, down those stairs, into whatever secret my perfect sister was hiding. The basement light flickered on to reveal a normal-looking office space. Desk, computer, filing cabinets, nothing unusual. I almost laughed at my paranoia, ready to retreat upstairs, when I noticed a seam in the wood paneling that didn't quite match. A hidden door. My fingers found a nearly invisible latch, and the panel swung open to reveal a second room. A room that would change everything I thought I knew about my sister, and force me to confront a horror I never imagined could exist in my own family. The small hidden room was meticulously organized, walls lined with shelves containing labeled boxes, a computer set up with multiple monitors, and a large corkboard covered with photos and documents. As my eyes adjusted to the dim light, I realized all the photos were of me. Me walking to my car, me at the coffee shop I frequented, me entering my apartment building. Hundreds of moments from my life, captured without my knowledge, spanning what looked like years. But it was the medical documents pinned alongside the photos that made my knees buckle. Lab reports, blood tests, genetic screenings, all with my name on them. How did she get these? I hadn't authorized any of these tests. Then I saw the collection of small vials in a refrigerated case, each labeled with dates corresponding to my weekend visits. With sickening clarity, I realized what had been happening. The special tea Melissa always insisted I drink. The occasional drowsiness I felt after dinner at her house. She had been drugging me and collecting my blood while I slept. But why? The answer came when I found a folder labeled Compatibility Testing. Inside were medical documents comparing my blood and tissue samples with those of the twins. Not testing if I was related to them, testing if my organs were compatible with theirs. Beside it was a leather-bound journal. My hand shook so badly I could barely open it, but when I did, Melissa's familiar handwriting filled the pages with an unfamiliar coldness. Emma remains unaware. Compatibility tests show promising results for both kidney and liver. Dr. Richards suggests we can proceed with first harvest within 6 months if pathology remains stable. David has concerns about keeping her sedated long enough for recovery, but I've assured him the basement room is soundproof, and we can attribute her absence to another of her irresponsible disappearances. Mother and father will believe it. They always take my word over hers. My vision blurred as I struggled to process what I was reading. Harvest? They were planning to take my organs? For the twins? Another page explained everything. The twins had been diagnosed with a rare genetic disorder, one that would eventually require organ transplants. A disorder that had been deliberately kept secret from me and the rest of the family. Rather than putting them on donor lists or seeking other options, Melissa and David had devised this elaborate plan to use me as their personal organ farm. My own sister had been studying me, tracking my health, and preparing to harvest parts of me for her children. The final piece fell into place when I found the architectural plans for the basement, including detailed drawings of the hidden room behind the hidden room. A room with a hospital bed, medical equipment, and soundproofing. A room designed to keep someone captive during a long recovery period. A room meant for me. My phone buzzed with a text message from Melissa. Running early. Be home in 20 minutes. I had to get out, had to get the twins out. But I needed evidence first. With trembling hands, I used my phone to photograph everything: the documents, the journal entries, the medical equipment, the architectural plans. I found a USB drive and copied as many files from the computer as I could. Then I erased all signs of my presence, locked the hidden room, and raced back upstairs. The twins were still sleeping peacefully, unaware that their parents had planned to sacrifice their aunt to save them. I called 911, but I didn't know what to say. "My sister is planning to harvest my organs," sounded delusional. They would think I was having a mental breakdown. I needed more time, more help. I texted Lisa again. "Pick me up now, bringing the kids. It's worse than we thought." Then I packed a bag for the twins, my hands shaking so badly I could barely zip it closed. I carried them, still half asleep, to the front porch just as Lisa's car pulled up. As we drove away, I saw headlights turn onto the street behind us. Melissa's car. "What happened in there?" Lisa asked, glancing at the drowsy children in the back seat. "They were going to kill me," I whispered. "My own sister was going to cut me open and take pieces of me for her children." Lisa didn't believe me until I showed her the photos. Then she drove straight to the police station. The days following my discovery were a blur of police interviews, court hearings, and sleepless nights. The twins stayed with Lisa while I was placed under police protection in a hotel. Every shadow made me jump. Every passing car could be David coming to silence me before their plan was exposed. During this time, I forced myself to confront a question that had been haunting me. Had there been signs all along? Had I missed something that could have alerted me to the darkness living inside my sister? I began digging into our family history, reaching out to distant relatives and family friends who had drifted away over the years. What I discovered painted a disturbing picture of the perfect sister everyone adored. Aunt Catherine, our mother's sister who had been estranged from the family for 15 years, finally told me the truth about why she'd disappeared from our lives. When I was only 12, she had caught Melissa, then 16, deliberately putting crushed glass into my cereal. When confronted, Melissa had shrugged and said she just wanted to see what would happen. Aunt Catherine had immediately told our parents, but they refused to believe their golden child could do something so monstrous. Instead, they accused Catherine of trying to create family drama out of jealousy. The rift that formed never healed. "I tried to warn them," Catherine told me over the phone, her voice thick with regret. But no one wanted to see who Melissa really was. More disturbing revelations emerged. A high school friend of Melissa's confessed that she'd once found a journal where my sister had detailed elaborate experiments she wanted to conduct on me while I slept, testing my pain thresholds, my reactions to various chemicals, how long I could survive under different conditions. The friend had dismissed it as dark humor or creative writing. The most chilling discovery came from our childhood pediatrician, Dr. Morris. After hearing about the case on the news, he contacted investigators with records showing I had been brought to his office 17 times between the ages of 6 and 8 for unexplained stomach pains, dizziness, and temporary vision problems. Tests had been inconclusive, and the symptoms eventually stopped. Dr. Morris now believed Melissa, who was often left to watch me after school, had been poisoning me even then. Children who harm siblings often grow up to be adults who harm siblings. the police psychologist explained to me. But they get better at hiding it, more calculating, more patient. I thought about all the times Melissa had taken care of me when I was sick, how she always insisted on making me tea or soup, how she'd volunteer to pick up my prescriptions from the pharmacy. For years, I had interpreted these as acts of kindness from a caring sister. Now I wondered how many of my health issues had been Melissa's creations. The detective assigned to my case sifted through old medical records and found a disturbing pattern. Every major health crisis in my life had coincided with periods when Melissa was most present. When she moved back home briefly after college, when she stayed with me for a week after I had a bad breakup, when she helped me recover from a car accident. Your sister has been practicing on you for a very long time, he told me gravely. The organ harvesting plan was just the culmination. When I asked why she would target me so consistently over so many years, he showed me a psychiatric evaluation conducted after Melissa's arrest. The diagnosis was antisocial personality disorder with specific fixation. Some predators choose victims outside their family, he explained, but others become fixated on a specific target, usually someone close to them who represents something they want or resent. For your sister, that was you. I still couldn't understand what I represented that she would resent. I was the struggling sister, the one who couldn't measure up. She had everything: the perfect life, the adoring parents, the successful career. The answer came from David during his separate interrogation, seeking a plea deal. According to him, Melissa had always been furious that despite my failures, I seemed genuinely happy in a way she couldn't achieve. My ability to find joy in small things, to connect easily with others, to be content without the constant validation she required. These were traits she both coveted and despised. She used to say you didn't deserve your happiness, David admitted. That someone like you, disorganized, unfocused, struggling, shouldn't get to experience joy when she did everything right and still felt empty inside. Melissa had created her perfect life like a carefully constructed theater set, impressive to look at, but hollow behind the facade. And every time she saw me genuinely laugh or form authentic connections, it reminded her of her own emotional emptiness. So she had spent years trying to extinguish my light, first through small cruelties disguised as childhood pranks, then through more sophisticated methods of manipulation and gaslighting, culminating in the ultimate plan to literally consume parts of me to save her children. In her mind, the psychologist explained, using your organs for her children had a certain poetry to it. The happiness she couldn't take from you emotionally, she would take physically, transferring it to her children through your living tissue. The depth of this lifelong campaign against me was almost harder to process than the organ harvesting plan itself. It meant that every memory of my sister, from earliest childhood to present day, needed to be re-examined, every kindness questioned, every shared moment scrutinized for hidden motives. I thought of all the times she had helped me with job applications, only to have the opportunities mysteriously fall through. The potential boyfriends she had subtly undermined or driven away with casual comments about my emotional issues. The way she always managed to mention my failures at family gatherings while presenting them as funny anecdotes or concerned observations. For 30 years, I had lived with a predator who wore the mask of a loving sister, a predator who had been methodically isolating me, undermining me, and testing me, all while I thanked her for her support. As I sat in the hotel room under police protection, I realized the harvesting plan wasn't a sudden deviance from my sister's character. It was the logical endpoint of who she had always been, and I had never seen it coming. 3 weeks after Melissa and David's arrest, while they were still being held without bail, I was finally allowed supervised visits with the twins. They had been placed in emergency foster care, a loving elderly couple who specialized in traumatized children, while the courts decided their long-term fate. Zoe and Zachary were only 3.5 years old, but seeing them in the sterile visitation room of the Family Services building broke my heart. Zoe's normally bouncy curls hung limp around her pale face. Zachary, usually bursting with energy, sat quietly clutching a worn stuffed rabbit I didn't recognize. "Auntie Emma?" Zoe whispered when she saw me, as if afraid I might disappear if she spoke too loudly. I knelt down, arms open, and they both rushed into my embrace. The social worker watched from the corner, taking notes on our interaction. "I missed you so much," I told them, fighting back tears. "Have you been okay?" Zachary nodded solemnly. "Miss Sharon and Mr. Tom are nice. They have a dog named Butter. He sleeps on my bed sometimes," Zoe added. "But we miss home." Home. The word carried such weight now. Their home had been the site of unimaginable betrayal, the place where their parents had plotted to mutilate their aunt to save them. The social worker had warned me not to discuss their parents or what had happened. At their age, the twins couldn't possibly understand the full horror of the situation. They had been told a simplified version. Mommy and Daddy did something wrong and had to go away for a while. Auntie Emma was helping to figure out where they would live now. But children absorb more than adults realize, storing away fragments of conversations, images, and emotions they can't yet process. As we colored together at the small table, Zoe suddenly asked, "Did you find Mommy's special cameras?" I froze, crayon hovering above the paper. The social worker leaned forward, suddenly alert. "What do you know about special cameras, sweetheart?" I asked carefully. "The ones in our bears and in the bathroom," she said matter-of-factly. "Mommy said they're to keep us safe, but they're really to watch you." Zachary nodded. "Mommy and Daddy watch you on the big computer in Daddy's office when they come home. They watch what you eat and when you take your medicine." I struggled to maintain a neutral expression. "Did they tell you that?" "No," Zoe shook her head. "We heard them talking. We're supposed to be asleep, but sometimes we pretend." The social worker was typing rapidly on her tablet now, documenting this revelation. I kept my voice steady as I asked, "Did you hear them say anything else about Auntie Emma?" The twins exchanged a look, that silent communication unique to twins. "They said you have special inside parts," Zachary finally offered, "that you can help us not be sick anymore." My blood ran cold. "What else did they say about being sick?" "That we have bad blood," Zoe said, returning to her coloring. "But you have good blood that can fix us." The casual way they described their parents' monstrous plan was perhaps the most disturbing part of all. To them, it had been presented as something normal, Auntie Emma sharing special inside parts to make them better. Later, when the twins were occupied with a puzzle, The social worker pulled me aside. "We need to add this to their therapy plan," she whispered. "They've been exposed to disturbing concepts about harvesting organs, presented as something beneficial. It could affect their development of empathy and boundaries." She hesitated before adding, "There's something else you should know. The medical examinations showed evidence of small, precise surgical scars on both children." "What?" My voice came out too loud, and the twins looked up momentarily before returning to their puzzle. "Nothing that affected vital organs," she clarified quickly. "Small tissue and bone marrow extractions, most likely, all performed by a medical professional, but many without proper hospital documentation." The implications hit me like a physical blow. Melissa and David hadn't just been planning to harvest my organs for their children. They had already been harvesting parts of their children for some purpose we hadn't yet discovered. Further investigation revealed the horrifying truth. Melissa and David had been participating in an experimental treatment program for the twins' genetic condition, one that wasn't approved in the United States. They had been having small amounts of tissue and bone marrow extracted from the twins and sent to a lab overseas that was developing personalized treatments using the children's own genetic material. The procedures weren't necessarily harmful in themselves. Similar legitimate treatments existed within proper medical frameworks, but the clandestine nature of these extractions, performed by a doctor who had since lost his medical license, constituted child abuse. More disturbing was what investigators found in David's emails. Discussions about using the twins as test subjects for experimental treatments before trying them on more valuable patients. Their own children had been guinea pigs for treatments they hoped to eventually sell through a biotech startup David had secretly established. When this information became public, any sympathy the community might have had for them as desperate parents evaporated. They hadn't just been willing to sacrifice me to save their children. They had been willing to risk their children to advance their ambitions. During my next supervised visit, I brought the twins their favorite books and toys from home. As Zoe snuggled against me while I read her story, she suddenly looked up with those innocent blue eyes so like her mother's, and asked the question I had been dreading. "Are Mommy and Daddy bad people?" How do you answer that question from a 3-year-old? How do you explain that the parents who tucked them in at night and kissed their scrapes had also treated them as commodities, as means to an end? "Your Mommy and Daddy made some very bad choices," I said carefully. "They hurt people, and now they have to face the consequences of those choices." "Did they hurt you?" Zachary asked, crawling into my lap beside his sister. "They were planning to," I admitted, seeing no point in lying when they had already overheard so much. "But they didn't get the chance, because I found out what they were doing." "Are they going to hurt us too?" Zoe's voice trembled. "No, sweetheart, no one is going to hurt you ever again. I promise." I didn't know then if I would be allowed to keep that promise. The courts were still deciding whether I should receive custody, given my own history of mental health struggles and financial instability. But in that moment, I knew I would fight with everything I had to protect these children, from the memory of their parents, from the system, and from the genetic disease that still threatened their future. As the investigation continued, Police discovered another horrifying element of Melissa and David's plan. They had taken out multiple life insurance policies on me, with the twins as beneficiaries. If I had died from complications during their harvesting procedures, my death would have financed further treatments for the children. I had never been just a source of organs to them. I had been a complete resource to be used up and discarded. My body parts for transplantation, my death for financial gain, and eventually, I learned, my identity to cover their escape. They had been creating documents in my name, setting up accounts and establishing a paper trail that would allow them to assume my identity after my disappearance if they needed to flee the country with the children. My entire existence had been mapped out for exploitation, not just by strangers or predators, but by my own blood. My sister, who had held my hand on the first day of school, who had taught me to apply eyeliner, who had seemed to cry genuine tears at our father's heart attack scare. All of it, every shared memory, every seeming moment of connection, had been part of the longest con imaginable. A lifetime of strategic positioning, leading to the moment when she would open me up and take what she wanted. The detective assigned to my case was initially skeptical. Who wouldn't be? My story sounded like something from a horror movie, not suburban reality. But the evidence was undeniable. The photographs, the medical documents, the journal entries in Melissa's handwriting, detailing plans to harvest organs from her unsuspecting sister. Child Protective Services took emergency custody of the twins while the investigation proceeded. My parents refused to believe any of it. They accused me of fabricating evidence to hurt Melissa out of jealousy. My father called me mentally unstable and threatened to have me committed. My mother simply cried and asked why I would make up such horrible lies about my own sister. The truth came out during the police search of the house. They found everything exactly as I had described. The cameras, the hidden basement room, the medical equipment, the detailed plans for my harvesting. They also found something I hadn't discovered. A small cemetery plot had already been purchased in my name. Melissa and David were arrested. During questioning, they broke down and confessed everything. The twins' genetic disorder was real, but their solution was monstrous. They had planned my first donation, a kidney, for the following month, with more surgeries scheduled as the children's condition progressed. She wasn't doing anything meaningful with her life anyway, Melissa told investigators, showing not a hint of remorse. I was going to make her life matter. Their defense attorney tried to argue they were desperate parents trying to save their children, but the premeditation was chilling. They had been documenting my health, drugging me, and planning my captivity for years. In a twist that even the prosecutors didn't see coming, further investigation revealed this wasn't their first attempt. 2 years ago, a young woman with similar physical characteristics to mine had gone missing after answering an ad to babysit for a professional couple with twins. Her body was never found. My parents finally faced the truth when confronted with the overwhelming evidence and additional charges. My father had a stroke the day Melissa and David were sentenced to life in prison. My mother moved across the country, unable to face the community after everything was made public. I received full custody of the twins. Despite everything, they were innocent children who needed love and stability. The irony isn't lost on me, the unstable sister, now raising the children of the perfect one. We moved to a small town where nobody knows our story. The twins are thriving with proper medical care for their condition, which turned out to be manageable with medication and diet. They're on donor lists if transplants become necessary. But for now, they're just normal, happy children. I never enter a house without checking for cameras now. I never drink anything I haven't prepared myself. And I never, ever go into basements. Sometimes at night, I still hear Melissa's voice from our last conversation in court. "I would have kept you comfortable," she said, her eyes cold and calculating even in defeat. "You would have been saving their lives. Why couldn't you just do this one thing for me?" The most frightening part of this entire ordeal? I never saw it coming. My own sister, the person I trusted most in the world, had been plotting to harvest my organs for years, and I had no idea until I found that hidden camera. So check your teddy bears, look behind your vents, and remember that sometimes the monsters don't hide under the bed or in the closet. Sometimes they're sitting across from you at family dinner, waiting for the perfect moment to strike.